Good to see everybody out this evening. This is the last Bible class of the year, and starting Sunday, you'll have a different Bible class teacher. Brace is going to be teaching the adult class. I'll be doing the teenage class. Do we have any of the young adult teenagers in here? Got some handouts for you. This is what we'll be studying. Anyone else? So, you've been in my adult classes out here, and I don't lecture a lot. Maybe I lecture a little bit too much. And so teenagers, you'll see the same. Participation, there may be some things in there at first, some of you may not be comfortable talking about, but we'll muddle through it. We are looking at Matthew 25, verses 1 through 13, where we had read about the 10 virgins. And before we get started, if you would, please join me in a word of prayer. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you so very much for this time that we have to worship you, to open up your word. We thank you for the Holy Spirit that guided the apostles and other writers of your book, that we may know what's expected of us and what your mind is and the things that we need in our life. We know that this is the bread of life, this is the word of life, and we pray that as we study these things, that we'll take those things into our hearts and to our minds, and that we'll apply them to our life, and that we'll spread your word and your gospel. Lord, sometimes your word is a little bit difficult, not because it's not understandable, but because of obstacles maybe in our life, maybe in the world it's an obstacle, and there are some things that we just maybe don't want to let go. But help us to open up our minds to know that the things that you've written these things about is for our spiritual health, for our physical health, that we may live long, that we may, after this life, live with you. And it's all these things we pray in Jesus' holy name. Amen. So we got into the 10 virgins here, and we talked a little bit about the lamp, and kind of signified that that's their light, how they show their works, their faith, and the oil being their faith to light that lamp. And so we know that all 10 of them thought that they were okay when they came to the feast, to the wedding, and because they all slept. If you're not prepared for something, if you got a test ahead of you like you were in high school or college, sometimes you might not be able to sleep because you're worried about that test. But evidently all 10 of these thought that they were okay, and then the bridegroom, he was delayed. He didn't come when maybe all of them thought. 5 of them had brought extra oil. And again, if we talk about oil being faith, the other 5 was saying, give us some of your oil. And one might think that when they said, no, we can't give you any because then maybe we won't have enough. But while we can try to share our faith as far as people seeing our faith by our works, we can't actually take our faith and give some of our faith to somebody else. That has to come from the individual. And so as we take a look at this, what did those that did not have enough oil go and do? Joyce? Chuck's coming.
You gotta be faster. They went to buy oil, and when they came back, you want me to tell you what happened?
Sure.
When they came back, the door was shut. Everybody was inside, and they couldn't get in. They tried to get in, and the bridegroom said no.
Right.
Can't get in.
And so it was at the very last moment that they went to get oil. I mean, all that time that they slept, they could have went and got oil. You know, if you want to consider our life right now as a sleeping period between the time that we have become a Christian and that that Christ is to return, or our day of judgment is coming, you know, after we die. Now's the time to get up out of sleep, to go and strengthen our faith and get our faith in there that we need. Because when we hear the bridegroom coming, it's too late, as we see with these five virgins. And as Joyce was saying, the door was shut. And I think Brace pointed on this on Sunday morning. What other door was shut that people may have tried to get into? The ark. You know, before this, with the householder and stuff like that, Christ talked about the judgment coming is like that of Noah. When that door is shut, it's shut. God has shut that door. And when God shuts a door, no man can open it. And so that's something that we really need to be aware of. When we looked at the householder, the main point of that was to be watchful. And that's something that, you know, these five unwise virgins should have done. So who were the 10 virgins waiting for? We'll go into before we go to the questions, any comments? Okay, who were the 10 virgins waiting for? The bridegroom, right. That's, of course, in verse 1. What preparations did the 10 virgins make in anticipation of the bridegroom's arrival? What preparations did they make? All 10 brought their lamps, didn't they? And what else did they bring? 5 of them brought extra oil, right? The other 5 did not. What happens when the bridegroom does arrive? Okay, those that were prepared and were ready, they went in with him to the marriage feast, and the door was shut. What application can we make from this? When the door was shut? What application can we make personally from that? Okay, the picture of finality. So when the door is shut, that's final. It's done. It's over. It's between the time that we arrive or we put on Christ to the time that door shuts, and we don't know when that door is going to shut. Certainly these virgins didn't know, did they? They didn't know when they had an idea of when they thought that the bridegroom was going to come, but did he come when they thought he was going to come? No. And so it was something unexpected. And so is that something that is going to be in our lives, something unexpected? Yes, no?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you. So, do we know when we're going to die? And I would tell you about the only thing that cancer would do for you is where you may not know exactly the day that you're going to die, but you know that your time is limited. That would give somebody, or if you had severe health problems with a heart attack, that would give you, if you survived that first heart attack, that would give you the time to make things right. But otherwise, all of us are healthy. All of us are healthy to a certain extent in various levels of health. But we just don't know when that day is going to be. And I mean, that could be in the next hour. That could be on the way home tonight. And so we don't know when that door is going to be shut. And so what do we need to do, which is really number 6, what is the main point of this parable? What is the main point? Chuck's going to come over to you, Audra. I know that you have more than a couple words there.
It's to teach us that our time here on earth is limited and that we need to realize what's truly important in life.
And that we need to be prepared all the time, right?
Right.
And not
Our
just,
oil or our faith needs to be ready.
yes, our faith needs to be ready. Oh, it's all handful. Anyone else? Anyone else with a comment on the 10 virgins before we move on? Dan, all right. Hold on. Chuck's coming. I know.
Yeah, for those viewers at home. Yeah, we called them the 10 virgins, so they were all in what we would consider a good status. So they were eligible
Yes.
for the bridegroom.
Yes.
And they did have their lamps. We talked about that earlier.
Yes.
But so just because we think we're in good status does not mean that we are. It's beyond just being the minimum eligibility there.
Right. Of course, I mean, because they all slept, so they thought that they were all okay. And that has to go with us. I'm sure, do we sleep well at night, knowing that if God was to return, tonight, that we would be looking forward to that? Or how many of us here would not be looking forward to that day when God returns, or that we stand before him? Gail?
If you read 1 Thessalonians, the 5th chapter, verses 1 through 3, it's good information for us. And it says, "Now as to the times and the epochs, brethren, you have no need of anything to be written to you. For you yourselves know full well that the day of the Lord will come just like a thief in the night. While they are saying peace and safety, then destruction will come upon them, suddenly like birth pangs upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape." Good information for us all the time. We need to be, somebody mentioned here a week or so ago, like the Boy Scout motto, be prepared. That's what we need to do.
Absolutely. Any other comments? Susan?
From what Gail just read, it says, "But you, brethren, are not in darkness, so that this day should overtake you as a thief. You are all sons of light and sons of the day. We are not of the night nor of darkness." Just reassuring.
And so we do need to be prepared. We do need to realize who we are. And we need to continually be working on our faith. Okay, anyone else? John?
I was just going to say, the idea that they all slumbered, another view of that sometimes folks have is that because it's not just their home and bed, they've gone out to meet the bridegroom. I mean, they're going out for this occasion, and yet they all slumbered. And I'm just mindful of what the Lord told the apostles when he says, "You'll all be made to stumble tonight." They're all going to have trouble. All the virgins, whether wise or foolish, they all slumbered, and they had to be woken up. And that's what, you can say the same thing. We all have trouble from time to time, and we have to be woken up. And that's a part of it.
If somebody would be turning, get Matthew 25 and read verses 14 through 30. Raise your hand and Chuck will come with the microphone. Okay, Gail.
Matthew 25, 14 through 30. "For it is just like a man about to go on a journey, who called his own slaves and entrusted his possessions to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, each according to his own ability. And he went on his journey. Immediately the one who had received the 5 talents went and traded with them and gained 5 more talents. In the same manner the one who had received the 2 talents gained 2 more. But he who received the 1 talent went away and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now after a long time the master of those slaves came and settled accounts with them. The one who had received the 5 talents came and brought 5 more talents, saying, Master, you entrusted 5 talents to me. See, I have gained 5 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful slave. You were faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. The one also who had received the 2 talents came up and said, Master, you entrusted to me 2 talents. See, I have gained 2 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful slave. You were faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. And the one who had received the 1 talent came up and said, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. And I was afraid and went away and hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what is yours. But his master answered and said to him, You wicked, lazy slave, you knew that I reap where I did not sow, and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have put my money in the bank, and on my arrival I would have received my money back with interest. Therefore take away the talent from him and give it to the one who has the 10 talents. For to everyone who has shall more be given, and he shall have an abundance. But from the one who does not have, even what he does have, shall be taken away. And cast out the worthless slave into the outer darkness. In that place there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
Okay, thank you, Gail. So as we take a look at the talents here, Christ had another parable that it wasn't really about talents, but it did concern something to this nature. And I think there were 10 servants that were slaves that came up, that things were parted, and they were to do work with that. What are some of the things that the master did for these 3 slaves? Why were they chosen to begin with? Yes, he knew their ability. Evidently, these were 3 people who were trusted, 3 people that he felt comfortable giving these things to. I mean, would you just give things to a slave if you were a master? Probably not. When you take a look at Joseph, Joseph went through a lot of things and trials to prove himself to get to the status that he was as a slave. And there were slaves that were trusted agents that were given authority over the other slaves, authority over the household, authority to go do this and do that. And so this is kind of what we see here. These 3 people were not your standard people. These were people who the master trusted. And as Gail pointed out, he knew their ability, so he gave these things according to what? Their ability. So he didn't expect something, really great from the 1 talent person. He expected something to be done. And that's why you see the 5 and the 2 and the 1 given to these 3 slaves, given according to their ability. So what do we see again about these slaves, other than being trustworthy, other than their ability? What was given to them besides the talents? We know that they were given talents.
Given an opportunity
They were given an opportunity. And really, they were given everything that they needed to do what was expected of them.
Like
The
you
master
said,
didn't give them the 5 talents, 2 talents, 1 talent, and didn't give them any instruction and just to leave them on their own. But they had everything that they needed to do what they needed to do. So we know that the 5 talent guy did what?
it says immediately he went and traded up for it, and so he doubled his money.
What do you have, Audra? Okay. What about the 2 talent guy?
Says he pretty much did the same. He made an increase on his.
So what if these guys had lost, instead of the 5 talent guy getting 5 more, what if he made some bad deals and only got 4 to give back to his master? Would his master have been mad?
I would not think so. He made an effort. He did something, rather than as this third slave who said he was afraid. I can't do anything because I know I'm going to be rebuked. I've got a hard master. So he was paralyzed.
So when we take a look at, and that's kind of the same thing that we found with the other parable, where people were given the opportunity to do work with what was given to them to increase things. But this person was scared. Are we sometimes scared? What would these talents represent besides the money that's in the parable? What would these talents represent? Okay, abilities. We know that they had the ability, but it could be our ability. And I think Chuck said these are opportunities. We have opportunities out there to use our abilities. So what keeps us from using our abilities for God? Because basically that's what the third guy did, right? Why did he not do anything? He was scared, wasn't he? So aren't we sometimes scared to use our ability? I'm not necessarily certainly I was kind of nervous when I got up to lead singing for the first time. A little bit nervous when I gave my first invitation and sermon. Don't we sometimes get scared? Don't we get scared sometimes to talk to other people? Yes, no. Okay. So what else might scare Joyce?
We don't have the commitment to do the things that we know need to be done, but we hang back and we wait to see if somebody else does it, and then if they don't do it, then you don't do it either.
Okay.
Lazy.
Sometimes we think somebody else is going to do it, or we just, and when nobody does it, we don't do it either. Or maybe we want to be led by the hand on what we need to do. Chuck?
I think we need to consider, our loving Father, if we make an effort, and again, if we lose, if we fail or fall, He's there to pick us up. At least we attempted to do something. That's what He's really wanting. He's wanting us, and if we're making an effort to do His will, you think He's going to help us? Or you think He's going to rebuke us for trying to do His will?
And don't we have a hard time sometimes understanding between what's a failure and what's normal? I mean, I know preachers that get discouraged because people just refuse to be baptized. That's a big discouragement. Like I said in an earlier class, sometimes we want to grade or rate a preacher by how many baptisms they have in a year or 2 years or whatever. Sometimes we try to rank them that way, or give them like a performance review that if you don't have as many baptisms, then something's wrong. But what is a Christian's job to go do? And we talked about this already too. So everybody should know. Joyce.
But in teaching, they have to learn first what to teach.
Right. And again, these three here, they had the ability, and they were given the responsibility according to their ability. So it's not like I'm asking someone that's 8, 9 years old to get up and to preach a half-hour sermon. Although there's some 8-year-olds that could probably do a good job. Chuck?
You say, what's our response? Sow the seed.
Yes.
It doesn't have to stand up in front of somebody and teach. Just be the light and the salt to influence. And again, sow the seed wherever. We're not responsible for where the seed lands. If it lands on good hearts or bad hearts, our responsibility to sow.
Sow the seed and water. That's our lane. That's our responsibility. It's God's responsibility for what?
Given the increase.
Right, for the increase. And so the increase is only going to happen if the person's willing to receive the seed, receive the water, and to grow and to become a Christian and grow in faith. And so as we take a look at this, again, sometimes we're afraid to sow the seed. Audra? Chuck?
I think that knowing that Christ, the greatest teacher of all, was not always successful.
Right.
Many people rejected him and rejected his teaching, and yet he had all perfect knowledge. He had the ability to teach, but you can't make people do what they don't want to do.
Right. And he even knew the hearts of people too.
Right.
So he knew his audience, and he tried to persuade them in a way that he knew that their heart might be able to take it. And so, I mean, if you take a look at the way that Christ taught, I mean, he did several different things. It wasn't just one style of teaching. You know, my grandfather said sometimes you can just tell someone to do something. Other times you need to get a 2x4, hit them upside the head to get their attention before you can teach them. And so sometimes Christ needed that 2x4 when he turned over the tables there in the temple. He's trying to get their attention to get them to do what was right. Yes.
As a reminder to myself, I don't write in my Bible very often, but down on the page I wrote several years ago, the fearful carry their talents.
Yes. This man was scared. He was afraid. And so, I mean, what did Christ say that these apostles and disciples was going to happen to them? They were going to suffer. There was going to be tragedy. There was, they were going to suffer. Some of them were going to die. Some of them were going to be beaten. They were going to be thrown in prison. Do you think that some of the fear came upon them on doing that when they saw Peter and John thrown in prison and beaten? I mean, we see that the church scattered. And it was also to a good degree that there were many disciples that were not afraid, that used their talents and established churches in other areas. But how many disciples do you think maybe scattered and did nothing? because they were afraid. They were probably a lot. John?
I was just going to say, concerning this guy's fear, and he says he's afraid. The master says he's wicked and lazy. And to think about this, the position he's in, he has been entrusted with money. And what I'm trying to get to is, what is he scared of? And for anyone who has ever had someone else entrust them with money, you don't want to lose the money. You don't want to come back with nothing. He says, and it doesn't specifically say what he's afraid of. You know, he says, I knew you to be an austere man. I knew you, had these expectations. But he didn't, I wonder if his fear was he didn't want to lose the money. And when we think about not using our talents, we don't think, concerning preaching, just for example. When I was 19, 20, 21, whatever, and I was as nervous as all get out. Well, that fear was not, well, I'm afraid I'm going to lose something. It was just cowardice. This individual, because of his position he was in and how the parable is being laid out, I think he's scared of losing it. But the Lord gets right to it, and he says, you're just wicked and lazy. And to think about, he goes out, he digs a hole, and he buries it. Well, what has he been doing this whole time? He's been doing other stuff. He's been doing wickedness. But I was just wanting to throw that out there about what is he really afraid of?
That I have seen people who were just getting started to get up to lead singing, people getting up to lead prayer for the first time or haven't been up there very often, or maybe give a lesson, and someone comes along and says, man, that was terrible. And what does that do to an individual? I'm done. Not going to do it. And so there is a fear of rejection when you get up to do something. And people don't always handle rejection very well. And I will tell you that the disciples are going to have a tough skin, because they're going to be rejected a lot. Just more than told that I don't like that. They're going to be beaten and thrown in jail and killed. So, there are things that you can lose. And I do think that maybe some of that may have been this fear, because, again, the master is a hard man, is what he said. Did I see a hand over here? All right. Go ahead, John.
Absolutely. If you don't use your talent, you do lose that talent. And I kind of wonder, to look at the flow of the Lord's conversation here in his teaching. I think y'all, we tuned in when we were gone Sunday, and someone had mentioned, well, how do we watch in the first parable? We're supposed to be watching. And then the Lord comes back and he's like, this is how you watch. You work. Watching is not looking up at the sky, waiting for the Lord to return. Watching is use your talents. Work.
So what could this guy have done with, again, some of the works that he could have done? And I think we talked about this on the last parable that was kind of like this. Chuck?
And the last parable says, put it into the bank, collect interest. At least you're getting something in return. You made making an effort to not, like I said, being paralyzed because of fear.
And so if what we have to give, maybe it is money that we can give. Are we sharing our wealth with other Christians that don't have as much? Yes, we are. And it's not just in this congregation, is it? We're helping someone in Africa, a congregation there with their needs, with some of the things that they are struggling with. in order to keep their faith and even day-to-day living. I mean, I know I could probably come up with the money to fly over there and help them, but is that what I really need to do? Would that be most beneficial? Or can we as Christians send help to them monetarily on the things so they can get the things done that they need to get done, to give them a leg up, to help them work and get lifted up, rather than go and just, we're going to teach them to fish instead of just giving them a fish. Chuck?
Like the guy with if you just see a little bit of an increase, and then you finally say, you know what? Something, it works. And then it continues to build, and you gain confidence, and and then you can grow your ability, and you could be like the 2 talent, get more capability.
Any other comments? Andrew? Chuck's going.
Couple of things. One is, I think there's more to these talents than just looking at abilities or skills that we might have. The way I read of these talents is it's everything that's received by a person by being an heir to the kingdom. Everything that's appointed or attributed to us by being part of the kingdom. So it's salvation, it's the gospel, it's access to the throne of the Father through prayer. It's all of the things that are given to a Christian by becoming part of the kingdom. So that's the totality of things that we can use. It's not just whether we have a skill to do something, but it's the very word itself, whether we are using that or using our ability to pray on behalf of others, pray for those who are around us, if we're making use of those things. So that was one. The second thing I wanted to bring out was the first 2 servants. I think the difference between these servants, the first 2, their primary interest is the benefit of their master. They're looking out for the interests of their master's goods and seeing their master gain the increase. Now, what they gain is given to them, but they don't really know that from the onset. They're interested in the master's well-being and the master's household growing. And then the wicked servant, he doesn't really seem to be interested. I don't think he hides the coin because he cares about the master's money. He hides it because he cares about himself. And he cares about his reputation, or he just doesn't want to be put to shame or to lose something for the master's sake. But it's not out of love or interest for the master. It's just out of self-preservation. So when we're too interested in trying to preserve what we have for ourselves, people who maybe they're constantly afraid, well, is my salvation secure? Am I really secure in being saved? We don't have to be afraid about that. God has told us that we can be sure in the hope that he's given us. So we need to stop being so worried about being scared for our own sakes and do things out of love for the growth of the kingdom and out of love for God. It's not about what we're credited with at the end. It's not about what we have attributed to our name. It's only about what we can gain for the sake of God. And if that's the mentality of the obedient servants. And if that's our mentality, then it doesn't matter the quantity or the rate of return that we get back.
So you think maybe the fear of failure for the third one, of what others would see him as a failure? Yeah. Well, it is selfish. It is selfish if we have fear to do something because we're afraid that we might fail. Gail?
One thing that's been left out of this conversation. There are many things we can do to help someone else. But one thing that we can all do, fear doesn't have any part of this, and that's prayer. We need to pray for them. I don't know about you folks, but I don't remember to pray for those in Zimbabwe every night. I just don't. And I don't know why. But certainly I can do that every day if I use my noggin. I can spend some time talking to my father, talking to him about the help that they need. What way can we help them more? Money is a good part of it for them, but there's other things that we can do. You mentioned you could go to Zimbabwe, maybe, but the man who entrusted us with the knowledge of the folks in Zimbabwe, he did a good work. He did something that he had an opportunity for, and we don't often have that. And I know I can't physically go to Zimbabwe, but I can prayerfully every night talk to my father about them. And I should.
And my thing, and that's true, we should, but my point is that we are doing, all of us collectively are a part of that work. Just like when Paul and Barnabas was bringing funds to Jerusalem to help them from the drought and from the things that they had going. I mean, that was a work that they could all share in doing. And that is a work that we can share in doing. Like I said, it's just like, who is it? I don't think it's K Jewelers, but the guy that come up and said, we know that you can't go to Belgium, so we go to Belgium for you and pick out the best diamonds. And say, hey, I want to go to Belgium myself. But, I mean, they say that we do that for you. And the thing is, we can participate in a work and not necessarily ourselves have to go there. We can share in that. And this person here could have shared in that as well. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was with the fear. Again, I think a lot of times we let fear stand in our way of doing something. Maybe we're not scared. Of course, maybe with, losing somebody's money, we worry about that, and yeah, we'd probably be scared about that. However, how many tries was done, how many failures was done with the light bulb? Thousands. But we have light bulbs, don't we? And it's because of persistence. If that first light bulb just burned out and didn't work, if the person was scared and said, "Oh, I'm a failure, I'm done," we'd be in the dark today. Now somebody else would have done it, but the thing is that we are called to step outside of our normal zone or our comfort zone to do things. We're to spread the gospel. We're to talk to people about the gospel. And we need to have a certain amount of fear, because isn't it, if the talents here is about growing Christians, isn't that a great responsibility these three were given? Given those talents? And aren't we given a great responsibility to talk to people about Christ? So when we do that, we have to be very careful in making sure that what we're teaching is right and correct. John?
So, we want the kingdom to grow. And one way the kingdom grows is numerically, but the kingdom grows, we're talking about within the parable, he gives the talents. It's about cultivating what the Lord has given us. And to think about that figure, because it is a figure of basically a farm. The man says, you knew that I reap where I have not sown. So it's the figure of a farm. And you think about, well, what does the Lord of harvest want? And it's the fruit of the Spirit. And you get into, this is not just growing numerically, or perhaps it's, okay, how do we grow numerically? Or it's all a part of it. It starts dovetailing together, and you start thinking about, well, the fruit of the Spirit is love and joy and peace and long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness. That's the fruit of the Spirit. It's like that's the fruit the Lord's looking for. Now, that fruit will start having an effect on others, and that may be where it starts growing numerically. But this is what the Lord of the harvest is looking for. That's the fruit. He tells us. And that's,
So again, getting back to our job is to plant and water, and God's is to reap where he had not sown, but basically where we have sown and water, and he reaps, he gives the increase. Okay, thank you so much for your comments. Brace will be teaching this next quarter. Thank you, John. Thank you, Chuck, for helping out. And again, thank you for all the comments. And I tell you, I have really benefited from the comments that have come up, because I have learned a lot more by hearing things from others rather than just studying and regurgitating what I have read. So thank you so much.